Annual Oscar qualifying HollyShorts Film Festival. I am your solo host now, Indiana Underhill, DP and co-founder of Cinematography for Actors, and stoked to dive into Layaway. Welcome.
Thank you.
Today, who we have with us, we have three incredible filmmakers. We have Kaitlyn T. Busbee, the writer, director, producer, and editor. Lots of hats here, by the way. Bridget Francis Harris, who plays Stevie, correct?
Correct.
Great. And Swanson, producer. Welcome.
Awesome.
This is going to be fun.
Awesome to be here.
We have 10 to 15 minutes, so they're short interviews. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of filmmaking and budgeting and the technical, the practical, and the creative, what is Layaway about?
Yeah. So Layaway follows Bridget here, playing the role of Stevie, and her younger brother, Tommy. And they are two teen siblings that spend their days fulfilling their kind of suburban fantasies and their nights sleeping out of their family car in a safe lot across town. And it really dives into kind of the curated world that they've created together and the kind of sacred nature of that and what happens when individuation and particularly Stevie's own wants, needs, and desires kind of bump up against that.
Wow. So I'd love to hear, as we're diving in, how you all found each other. So have you collaborated before on projects? Is this a first? What was the interview process like, casting process, things like that?
Yeah. So we submitted casting breakdowns through Actors Access, Backstage. Okay. We went to Instagram, Facebook, all the things.
Yes.
And we got, like several hundred submissions, which was very exciting, especially as a student film. And they were from all over the country. And Bridget submitted. And I saw her and I was like, this is Stevie.
Yes.
You know, and there's a funny part to it though, is that I actually DM'd Kaitlyn on Instagram I had submitted officially, but then I DM'd her saying, one of my good friends goes to NYU. You might know him. I think I'm perfect for this role. And I texted my friend from NYU and was like, hey, do you know this person? Is she a good filmmaker?
Yeah.
Is she cool? And he was like, yeah, I'll put in a good word for you. So it kind of felt very kismet. Like, you know, I was like, this is my role. Like, it really did just feel like the right place, right time. And you gotta, ask for what you want. So
those are the best stories. And then what about Kai, your relationship to the project? How were you brought on?
So I was originally brought on in pre-production, but was busy, not able to kind of make it happen. And then post-production, I reached out and was like, hey, like, do you still need any help or support? And that's kind of when I jumped on board, was during one of the rough cut phases.
Fantastic.
Very early rough cut
wow.
phase.
And so were you on location for the majority of it? I know they're sleeping in the car. Were there how did you approach your car shots, things like that?
As far as where we shot, production-wise on location? Yes, they're all practical locations. Okay. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. We shot in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm still living in New York City. I'm in the grad film program at NYU, and I knew that I wanted to make what they referred to as their second-year film, which is kind of like the cornerstone project of the program. I knew I wanted to bring it back home and shoot it in Iowa, and so I went and I crewed on a bunch of other classmates' films up to it, and then I had 3 weeks back home for full pre-production mode. Found all the locations at that point, locked them in, and just spent time there kind of rewriting on location. And then cast and crew joined. We had 2 days kind of all together to ground and center, and then we jumped into 5 production days.
And so environment and space by location is obviously then such a huge character within the film, I imagine, if you wanted to bring it back home. How did you want to communicate that on screen?
I think it's fun to bring filmmaking outside of the city. I've been making films now in New York for the last 5 years, and I just kept feeling this desire to bring films back home to the Midwest. I'm not sure if you can relate. You probably can as a DP.
Absolutely.
It's really nice to get outside of the hubs.
Yes.
And you come across a lot more support than I think.
Absolutely.
People are like, oh, filmmaking, that's fascinating. That's interesting. Let me
Instead of hearing
play a role.
no's to everything, you're hearing yes, let's figure out a way of doing it.
Yeah. Sure, you can shoot in our parking lot for 2 days. Go for it. We'll close it down for you, It's a really wonderful thing. And so I think just leaning into that and the uniqueness of the spaces we were in.
Yeah.
And on top of that, too, we approached this with a pretty intentional kind of docudrama style. Both myself and my DP, we come from a documentary background, and so we really wanted to bring that kind of influence of feeling really alive in the moment, letting actors play and then following action, rather than having very regimented shot lists.
Got it. In addition to kind of that more free-form anticipation style of filmmaking, and working with the character of Stevie. Did you also do more like the wide lens look and more handheld and like picking up coverage just through process of like, let's play out the scene and see where we need to cover it? Was it a lot of that day of with a dogma approach around it?
Definitely. Okay. Like we went in with a lot of approach and structure. Like we had a very specific plan, but then I think because we kind of nailed down this plan so much, then when it came time, we could just kind of like free ourselves to the moment. Yeah, that was the hope.
So one of the intake forms we send out to all of our selected filmmakers for the interviews is what was unique about this film's production, and I have such a beautiful paragraph with me. We've already talked about the docu-style vibe, but what I'd love to also dive into is embracing the imperfections of filmmaking, and why specifically you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the beauty and what I like to refer to as alchemy of the art of filmmaking is like leaving it up to process and not being so kind of like regimented and structured and locked into like, this is how I envision it, so this is how it has to go. And sometimes the best like things that end up in the film itself are the surprises that happen on set.
Awesome.
And I think for us and for Layaway, and I know Bridget can talk to this, it was definitely the last shot of the film.
Okay, wow.
Like we had one plan going into it that was like pretty, you know, like 3-4 shots, like we're going to cover it like this. And then I think we were just like doing a company move, which was literally 2 blocks with the 2 locations we had. And they were like, oh, we want to ride the bike over. And we were in the car, in the car that we were shooting out of. Just kind of Ben and I were playing, shooting it as we traveled from location to location, and it was like, wow, I think this is the shot. And then, we really leaned into it. We just
kept doing it. It was like a group effort of like, okay, we didn't get the shot, and we all felt it, and so it'd be like, okay, again, and we would all just like reset immediately because we felt it, and then like when we got it, it was really triumphant. It just felt so playful, and I think that's like the heart of the film to me, is like about kids who grow up too fast. And I think that the whole film is about finding that spirit of play, and like that's exactly what we did, is that we spent a week in Iowa having a great time. It was very fun, it was very playful, and like just really full-spirited. Wow. Like I'll never forget that moment.
And Kai, for you, when you received the script and working through prep, what were the biggest things about the script that you were like, you know, short filmmaking is all about what like you're gonna have to sacrifice, but what were the biggest priorities of the script for you that you were like, we have to get that, we have to make sure that stays in?
Well, I think the biggest thing was just the aspect of the relationship between the siblings, and also just, I mean, really just the story in and of itself. It's a story I don't see on screen very often. It's a very important story, and it's a piece of America that I don't think a lot of people get an opportunity to see. So making sure that intimacy with the siblings and this environment, this landscape they're part of, was just of utmost importance, and making sure that your vision like really came across, but also like the beauty of your performance, of Simon's performance. So when like looking at the final cut, it came across really beautifully.
Oh, and for Bridget, what surprised you about your performance?
Oh man, I don't know if anything surprised me more than I knew Kaitlyn had my back. I came into this process with the intention to just like surrender to the honesty of the moment and breathe and speak. Like I really was like, okay, I'm gonna stay on my voice for this whole project. That's my goal. Even if I feel uncomfortable, I'm gonna speak on my voice. And you know, Kaitlyn was there to tell me if anything was weird or wrong. And really, like I just was like, like, oh my God, here we go. So yeah.
Wow. And so with we've spoken about your DP. Obviously, we have producers, directors, and cast represented here. What was it like to bring it back home and get production design in there? What were the biggest things that you wanted to bring to the world that didn't already exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think this might sound extreme, but it was like a near spiritual experience for me.
Yeah.
To bring friends from New York back home, to work with friends from Iowa. You know, it was like these 2 worlds colliding in a really unique, special way. And one of the individuals from Iowa that I met on this project was our art director, Buffalo Bonker. And I know,
coolest
yes, that is his
name ever. Buffalo Bonker.
That's amazing.
And I mean, I can't tell you, like, especially being back in Iowa for 3 weeks trying to, like, kind of produce this before the rest of the crew came, I was like, oh my God, you know. And then he came on board and he just, like, elevated this thing. I was like, yeah, we have, like, 3 different storage units, but they're, like, all full and I don't know what to do. He's like, oh, I got that. And so then I, like, went 2 days later to this empty storage unit that he had fully brought in PD into, and it was, like, all ready to go. And it was just finding the people that you can be like, yeah, this is a person who knows their craft. This is a person who's just, like, down to earth. And then trusting them to do their thing. I think that's the coolest part.
That's the common theme here, I think, between all of us. Is we've constantly said, like, giving away and the trust and the give and take process of it. So my final question for you is, how emotionally was it important for you to separate, because you're talking about the spiritual experience, was it important for you to somewhat separate emotionally from that location and see it as, like, we're making this film specifically, or did you want to fully embrace the fact that this was your, like, hometown that you were now making into a film?
I mean, I think embrace,
Awesome.
really. Yeah, I mean, Iowa, and I'm sure the same goes for many other states throughout the U.S., like, there's just a freedom in the diversity of location, and the support factor there was huge. Like, my family's there. The Iowa Arts Council is a very wonderful entity that plays a huge supportive role with anything artistic going on in the state. So yeah, just, like, really leaning into it and not shying away from the fact that, like, hey, I'm bringing this out of a big kind of city hub, which is what I've been doing, and then going to rural world, you know?
This is so exciting. I'm really excited for you guys that Layaway is here at the HollyShorts Film Festival, and that through all of the imperfections of filmmaking, something perfect is coming on screen. So today at 5 p.m. you can watch Layaway, and thank you so much to Kaitlyn, Bridget, and Kai for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
And if you can't be here for the festival today at 5 p.m., you can check out this film on bitpixtv.com. So there's no excuse. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. This has been another episode of the Cinematography for Actors podcast. Follow us on wherever you listen to your podcast to keep up to date on new episode releases. We will be live through August 20th here at HollyShorts Film Fest. If you're here, drop in and say a little hello at the VIP lounge. We also want to thank our sponsors, Apogee, Film Tools, Roscoe, Lightstone Rentals, Canon, and First Mile Tech. As a special gift to you listeners, we've partnered with We Make Movies to get you a discount on comprehensive production insurance packages. Use code CFA23 on your intake form for 10% off your quote by visiting wemakemovies.org/insurance.
If you missed any of our live streams, you can watch all of our interviews on our YouTube channel, Cinematography for Actors. And make sure you follow us on Instagram at Cinematography for Actors. You can also catch us in a more formal setting on Monday, August 14th at Japan House for a panel discussion on the importance of bridging the gap between talent and crew. You can get 20% off of your ticket purchase by using the code HSFF2023CFA at checkout.
Thanks!